Hello, it's John Flutter here again with another short video from our webinar series, and I want to look at arch form today. I want to look at that because it's one of the first things we look at when we do our myofunctional orthodontic evaluation, and I start off by showing you what is the anatomical ideal form that we see in the textbooks. Ideally, this shows when you've got a fully formed maxillae, left and right side, with all the teeth in. And what I'm going to suggest is that is the shape and the size of the tongue. And in an ideal occlusion, the tongue is up in the roof of the mouth, and the teeth will erupt around the tongue, forming the correct ideal anatomical form, and also directing the maxilla to a more forward position within the cranial complex, moving the whole maxillae downwards and forwards. When the tongue is in the roof of the mouth, it brings the lower jaw with it. The tongue and the lower jaw move as a single unit, and the lower teeth will come in contact with the upper teeth, and the tongue will support the upper jaw and bring the lower jaw with it into the ideal occlusion. So when we see a child at age 12 or 13 with an increased overjet, we might consider that to be a genetic abnormality, or what I'm suggesting, we see that as the inevitable result of the lip and tongue posture that's often adopted from birth. When the tongue is not in the roof of the mouth, either it will be between the back teeth or inside the lower jaw, most commonly in between the back teeth. If the mouth is then held open, the tongue and the lower jaw drop downwards and backwards, and the tendency is for the lower lip to get postured or trapped behind the upper front teeth. That is the lip posture behind the upper incisors, and the tongue between the posterior teeth. And then in function on the swallow, the lower lip is sucked up behind the upper incisors, the tongue comes forwards and meets them in that gap between the upper and lower incisors. But because the tongue is not in the roof of the mouth, then the upper jaw has not developed to the shape of the tongue, nor has it developed into the normal common forward position that we ideally like it to grow in. The anterior open bite is associated with the tongue thrust, and it's very easy to assume that the tongue thrust is because the tongue is placed too far forwards. But the tongue actually may not be the culprit here. The problem may be that the upper jaw is too far back. If the upper jaw has not developed to the correct shape and size with the tongue in the palate, and it's not been pushed forward by the tongue into a more forward position in the cranium, then it's not the tongue that's too far forwards when we get a tongue thrust. It could be that the maxillae are too far back. When we have an anterior open bite, it's one of the most difficult patterns to correct in the permanent dentition because relapse is so high. But if we can get the maxilla forward early in life and get the tongue to support it, then we can prevent these anterior open bites being such a problem in the late mixed and permanent dentition. The anterior crossbite, almost without exception, you're looking at an habitual mouth breather. The tongue is doing in the lower jaw, ideally what we want it to be doing in the upper jaw. So the lower jaw gets well developed. The upper jaw doesn't have the tongue support for it to develop to the correct size, nor does it get pushed forwards into the correct position within the cranium. So we have the the pattern of the jaw shape and size, either it might be considered to be a genetic unfortunate abnormality or a result of where the tongue is postured. When the tongue is not in the roof of the mouth during the growth, the essential growth and development stage from birth till when about 90% of the maxillary arch is formed at about age 6 or 7. If the tongue has not been in the roof of the mouth during that period, you will have an arch form that is not the shape of the tongue, and also that maxillary arch will not have developed to its ideal or correctly forward position. And if we can take that arch form when the children are young in the mixed dentition and change the shape of the arch form, and then train the tongue to support that new arch form, train the children to keep their lips together, to breathe through the nose, keep the tongue in the roof of the mouth, then we can support the new arch form, which tends to suggest it's not a genetic abnormality, but these malocclusions are a result of incorrect or poor tongue and lip posture from very early in life. So when we're doing our myofunctional orthodontic evaluation form and we start by looking at the arch form, we can learn a lot about where the tongue has been and what we need to do to try and correct that. And just to repeat what we've said before, in the mouth breathers, both the mandible and maxillae are more retrognathic. So the position of both upper and lower jaws is really important when we're coming to consider what the shape of the upper arch form is, but also where the upper arch is in relation to the other bones within the cranium. Thanks very much for your attention. I look forward to bringing you more of these videos, which are excerpts from our webinar series and all part of our live program where we teach in-house how to identify and treat these in the early mixed dentition and in the late mixed dentition. Thank you for your attention.